across the Pacific is being somewhat moderated, or if not moderated, but managed. So therefore, we can see that the following APEC can really carry on such a spirit and bring something that is very concrete to harness the relationship and also to build a more predictable rules that members can really follow. So APEC has been there for so many years as a platform. It's generated RCEP, it generated TPP, and then CPTPP. So hopefully they can really generate something more specific. So now, for example, the certificate of origin is already being implemented with high efficiency within RCEP, and how can we really deepen or upgrade such sort of collaboration?
Professor Gao, tell us more about China's ideas, proposals and initiatives in this big picture. Take, for example, in the just concluded G20 summit in Bali, the digital transformation has been reiterated, its importance, of course. We know it was first included into the G20 agenda in the Hangzhou summit years ago. Tell us more about China's initiatives.
Well, I think China now is a champion of digital transformation, and China believes that everything
that still applies to the APEC context, do you think?
Absolutely. APEC as well as to the G20 framework. I think China's belief is that everything we do traditionally can have a digital dimension added to it. And going forward, data which we generate on a daily basis can become a very important factor of production. It used to be the case that data is very separated and it's not aggregated and assembled together in a coherent way. But going forward, data itself will be key to, let's say, a megaverse or AI-based robotics, for example, and it will be a very important driving force for economic growth going forward. And then it is true that between and among countries there is a big digital divide, and President Xi Jinping talked about that in Bali during the G20 meeting, and I think he probably will also talk about that at APEC summit. That is, there are countries which are less advantaged in terms of digital economy, and other countries which are really very fast moving forward. We need to bridge this digital gap. And within any country, there is also a huge digital gap between those who have it or can afford it and those who simply don't have it. We also need to narrow that. So digital gap need to be narrowed within countries and on the global scale. And I think going forward for G20, for example, as well as for APEC, if we can come up with a framework of digital transformation, digital emancipation, for example, the productivity will be enhanced tremendously.
Professor, we have to stop you right there. You're watching footage from Bangkok. This is the plane carrying Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife Peng Liyuan. Now the two are stepping out of the plane. Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife Peng Liyuan have arrived at Thailand's Bangkok airport. President Xi Jinping is there to attend the 29th APEC Economic Leaders meeting and visit Thailand from this very day to Saturday. And besides attending the APEC gatherings and events, he will also hold formal talks with Thailand's Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha, and we understand that Thailand's Prime Minister is at the airport to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping. So, Professor Gao, you were talking about China's initiatives and proposals in this complex world.
Absolutely. And then when we talk about digital economy, there is a whole range of things that need to be assembled and to be developed at the same time. And for example, electronics and the semiconductors, for example, and also new ways of collecting data, storing data, processing data, and then reproduction of data and transmission of data and sharing of data to as many people as possible. And in that regard, for example, the e-commerce platforms that China have very successfully pushed forward, digital payment, digital settlement, and then even, for example, the sovereign-backed digital renminbi, which will be really a major milestone event in global finance, for example. All these are parts, bits and pieces of this digital future that we are talking about. And I think in doing this, hopefully no country will be left behind. Whether you have the industries or manufacturing capacities or R&D capacities, etc., that's another thing. But the results of the digital economy need to be pushed to as many countries as possible, to be shared by as many people in many countries as possible. That should be a better and more balanced way of developing digital economy in the future.
Well, I think in
Yes,
addition
Professor.
to it, for the digital economy, it is really up to more of the non-government sectors that contribute a great deal, not only in terms of the technology, but also, for example, within APEC, they have the e-commerce association that is there to combine different type of institutions on a non-governmental level, and they have been doing very successful in self-disciplining and also in stamping up corruption over internet, and also to prevent the counterfeit goods, etc. And I still remember it during the Hangzhou APEC meeting, and Jack Ma brought up the EWTP, which is the e-commerce platform
Professor,
around the world.
sorry to interrupt, but many are also arguing that none of this will happen without the infrastructure, the heavy infrastructure invested and built by governments with strong determination. Only with that, e-commerce, data flow, and all those fancy things mentioned by Professor Gao can happen.
Yes, the government solves two issues. One is connectivity, and the other is regulation. And then, within this and also on this platform, it is really the businesses and also even other non-governmental institutions that are there to play on the stage. So we do see that the e-commerce has been rolled out, and also that because it is a budding industry with big potential, it's normally that the practice that is on cumulative basis gradually being approved and regulated. So therefore, like the credit rating system for businesses, for individual vendors, and also the complaint system that is being handled between customers and vendors, and this is something that is generated by the businesses, and eventually through dialogue and also through coordination, and regulation will come on on sovereign basis. But then countries can really meet together to discuss more of a more applicable regional rules. So this is really the way how things can really develop. So so far, the one challenge is that despite of all the consensus how important is digital economy, countries have very different attitudes with regard to where is the border of national security or data security versus data efficiency. So I hope that they're going to make at least some marginal progress in the digital economy regulation at the APEC, but it's going to take a long run for them really to harness the consensus with regard to security versus efficiency for the digital economy.
In the footage we just watched, Professor Gao, Thailand's Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha was at the airport to welcome Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife Peng Liyuan. Tell us a little bit more about bilateral ties and its momentum between China and Thailand in recent years.
Thailand as an ASEAN member state, has one of the closest relations with China, and the close friendship and cooperation date back all these decades. I understand, China-Thailand people-to-people cooperation dates back to hundreds, if not thousands of years. And this is the very good, solid foundation upon which modern-day China-Thailand relations can really be built upon. Now, Thailand itself is also peace-loving, and it has good relations with many countries in not only our part of the world, but throughout the world. And therefore, for example, in terms of numbers of Chinese tourists visiting Thailand, Chinese business investments in Thailand, and also Chinese universities accepting students from Thailand in all parts of China. And then on Thailand's term, their visits, including family visits, for example, a Chinese diaspora community's visits back to China's mainland, Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan province, for example, these are truly very, very good examples of good neighborly and friendship relations. We call people in Thailand kind of our cousins or brothers and sisters. There is a special way of dealing with people from Thailand. And I think this is further enhanced because now Thailand is a destiny of huge Chinese investments. I think China's investments in ASEAN countries probably is one of the highest in Thailand. And this bodes well for future connectivity between the two countries, to governments, to peoples, for example, and business communities from both countries going forward. Another thing I want to emphasize is that in terms of Chinese investment in Thailand, I hope eventually there will be more and more high-tech oriented. For example, China is doing a lot in terms of pharmaceutical research, medical research and manufacturing. And in Thailand, I hope there will be a joint effort in building up, for example, vaccine research and production centers in Thailand, so that Thailand can be in a better position, in a stronger position to scramble into action as soon as possible whenever another pandemic hits mankind.
Well, gentlemen, we'll be getting back to you on this. The Director General of the Department of International Economic Affairs and Thailand's APEC senior official said in an interview that Chinese President Xi Jinping's presence in Thailand will be very much welcomed.
China's President Xi Jinping will be in attendance. How significant is this for APEC, and what can China bring to the table to strengthen regional cooperation?
Extremely important player in APEC as second largest economy in the world. Probably the largest economy in the world in the next few years. China plays a very important role in the region. And the fact that the leadership of President Xi Jinping is well known throughout the region, I'm sure that his contribution as one of APEC leaders will be recognized so much across the Asia Pacific. We all recognize the role of China, the role that China can play in all this endeavor. China is very big in the green agenda. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was in Beijing in 2014 that APEC leaders, for the first time, touched on new economic approach that includes green economy and blue economy. The era that spells very clearly how sustainability, how responsibility will drive the Asia-Pacific economy forward.
Given the current state of the global economy and heightened geopolitics, how poignant is the timing of this meeting?
I don't think we can ignore the fact that there is this elephant in the room. The APEC of 2022 is rather different. We are witnessing a growing sense of geopolitical element in the APEC process. And now we faced with a big question of how to make sure that APEC stays relevant and, most importantly, continues to make an impact. And of course, we cannot do that without major players, major economies like China. And that's where we want to have a really constructive conversation with our economies under the leadership of China as well.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in Bangkok for the 29th APEC Economic Leaders Meeting. The Chinese president is expected to address the meeting. His speech will elaborate on China's major proposals to deepen Asia-Pacific cooperation and promote regional and global economic growth. His visit to Thailand from November the 17th to the 19th is at the invitation of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha of the Kingdom of Thailand. The two countries' leaders are also set to hold formal talks. Professor Liu, what's your take on the development of bilateral ties between China and Thailand?
Well, to forge a good bilateral ties, at least the two partners should be peaceful enough. I think they, both China and Thailand, really qualify for this one. So they maintained a political stability, and people are really peaceful and moderate, but very much resolved for economic growth and also to have the shared culture with China. And actually, we have been very creative in, having a barter trade in today's environment, between rice and railways, and so that has been very successful. And for so many years, I've been offering training program for both their government officials and also their students. And I really like them because, well, they are very respectful, of course, but more importantly, that they do very quality work. And so they will be there to contribute. And I think one very important industry is the tourism. So actually, one of my students is running in Thailand a tour agency. They particularly cater to the Chinese tourists. They said, without Chinese tourism, Thailand economy could be fractured to a big extent. And then, agricultural cooperation. Even the Chinese rural farmers know that they cannot really compete with the Thailand rice. But how can really these two countries collaborate in terms of the agriculture, in building building a mechanism to share, from seeding to fertilizing to growth, etc. And then fruits are something that is highly favorable in China. And so, of course, from China, or construction power, or home appliances, and now Victor also mentioned about some of the high tech. And so, how we can really shape more of the content in the China-Thailand economic park over there. And then, so I think the bases are already very strong. And how we can really tap into further deepening of the bilateral ties, at the technology level, beyond the trade and investment, and also at the people level, so that we can get more integrated. And then the investment protection treaty can be also updated to give investors more of the confidence. And then streamlining of the visa process, etc. That can really help the free flow of the people, both scientists and engineers, and also workers. So I think there's some of the minor issues that can further improve our efficiency of working together.
Well, going back to the Asia-Pacific context, Professor Gao, China has been calling for establishing a community of shared future in the Asia-Pacific. What's the essence of this idea?
I think China's advocacy of the community with a shared future for mankind not only applies to the APEC region, but to the whole world, meaning that every country, big or small, need to respect each other, deal with each other as an equal, and inclusive development to be promoted throughout the world and within the APEC region, for example, throughout to all member states. And then I think there should be a multilateralism. There should be opposition to single power hegemony, for example, imposing its will on all the others. And then the common prosperity for mankind as a whole will be maximized if, for example, different countries put their heads together to promote common development. And I think this policy is really the future for mankind as a whole, because I think in the world of today, no country wants to be subjugated to another country. Every country wants to have its own independence of mind to make its own judgment as to what works for itself and what system, for example, or values that their people want to have. And no one really wants to have another country imposing its will or political system onto my own people. So I think this really is very elegant, but it's also very simple, very straightforward, and I think it caters to the requirements of all people in the world today.
Thank you very much, Professor Victor Gao and Professor Liu Baozheng there. That's it for this special coverage on CGTN. I'm Pan Deng in Beijing. CGTN will keep you updated on the APEC Economic Leaders Meeting throughout the rest of the week. Stay tuned.